The man who had asked Lady Eliza to become his duchess had already signed the order to hang her father. The ink was still fresh. In 5 hours, Sir Thomas would die, and marriage would place Eliza under the legal control of the man who had condemned him. Why force her to the altar when his revenge was already complete? Only minutes earlier, Eliza had slipped into the Duke of Ashbourne's locked study, searching for anything that might delay the execution. She had expected to find witness statements, intercepted letters, perhaps even the diplomatic dispatch used to brand her father a traitor. Instead, she found tomorrow's death warrant. It lay inside a black Home Office box that had been delivered after dinner. The document carried the official red ribbon, the date of March 18, 1817, and an order authorizing Sir Thomas Harcourt's execution at 6 in the morning. At the bottom stood the signature of Julian Vale, Duke of Ashbourne, the same man who had placed a marriage contract before Eliza less than an hour ago. Become my wife, and the Harcourt estate will remain in your family. Refuse, and the crown would seize everything after her father's death. Nearly 80 tenant families would be expelled from land they had worked for generations. Julian had offered no promise to save Sir Thomas. He had offered only to control how much of Eliza's life survived the hanging. She lifted the warrant toward the candle. Her father had trained her to examine diplomatic documents during his years in Vienna and Lisbon. By 14, she could identify which embassy had produced a letter from its paper, cipher spacing, sealing wax, and even the way a clerk sharpened his quill. The signature appeared perfect. Too perfect. Julian's genuine hand contained a slight break before the final stroke of Vale. As though impatience always overtook discipline at the last instant, the signature on the warrant reproduced the break precisely. Yet the pressure never changed. Every line had the same lifeless depth. Someone had copied his name slowly enough to imitate its imperfections. Footsteps approached the study. Eliza folded the warrant and concealed it beneath the lace at her waist, just as the door opened. Julian Vale entered alone. He had removed his evening coat, but nothing about him seemed less formal. His gray eyes moved from the unlocked dispatch box to the spare key on the desk, and finally to Eliza. I was told you had retired. I was told my father received a lawful trial. His expression hardened. Whatever you hope to steal will not alter the verdict. Then you should have nothing to fear from my searching. Julian closed the door behind him. Your father admitted composing the intercepted dispatch. He composed the original Das Fort. He denied adding the courier route. That route placed 3 British officers in the hands of French agents. And one of them was your brother. The word stopped him. Captain Nathaniel Vale had died outside Calais after the courier party's location was exposed. Julian had carried his brother's body home. 3 months later, he had presented the altered dispatch before the House of Lords and publicly called Sir Thomas Harcourt a traitor. His grief explained the hatred in his eyes. It did not excuse what he had done with it. Julian crossed toward the bell pull. You will return anything you removed, or I shall have you searched. By your servants? By the constable, if necessary. Eliza drew the warrant from her gown. Will you ask him to arrest me before or after our wedding? Julian froze. She placed the document on the desk between them. For the first time that evening, the Duke of Ashbourne lost control of his expression. His gaze moved across the date, the execution order, and finally his own name. The color receded from his face. You signed my father's death warrant before asking me to become your wife. Eliza said, was the proposal meant to save my tenants or prevent me from challenging the execution? I did not sign this. She had prepared herself for cruelty, not denial. That is your hand. It resembles my hand. It was found in your locked study, in a dispatch box I had not yet opened. How convenient. His fingers closed around the paper. You entered this room illegally, opened government correspondence, and hid a crown document beneath your dress. Be cautious when accusing others of convenience. You threatened innocent families to force me into marriage. I offered them protection. You made their protection dependent upon my obedience. Julian looked at her without flinching. Your father's conviction places the Harcourt property under attainder. As my wife, you would have the legal influence to keep those families on the estate. Without my name, you will own nothing by tomorrow afternoon. Then you do not want a wife? You want custody of the traitor's daughter. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not tenderness, not remorse. Recognition. Perhaps that she had named the bargain more honestly than he had. Eliza pointed to the warrant. If you did not sign it, prove it. I cannot prove a negative. You can tell me who had access to this box. The Home Secretary. His undersecretaries. The issuing clerk. The courier and any servant who handled it after arrival. Then someone among them intends to kill my father using your authority. My authority is unnecessary. The sentence has already been passed. Not this order. Look at the date. I have looked. Look at the ink. Julian angled the paper toward the candle. His anger gave way to concentration. The signature is darker than the body of the warrant. Eliza said, it was added later. That proves nothing. The final stroke has been copied from another document. Whoever wrote it understood the appearance of your signature, but not the movement of your hand. His gaze rose slowly. And you can determine that from one line of ink? I spent 10 years preparing diplomatic copies for my father. It is why the prosecution refused to let me examine the dispatch used against him. That fact unsettled him more than the accusation had. 3 urgent knocks struck the door. Mrs. Bell entered without waiting for permission. The housekeeper had served the Vale family for 23 years and rarely displayed emotion. Yet her face was bloodless beneath her white cap. Earlier that evening, she had left the spare study key beside Eliza's candle without being asked. Sir Thomas had once prevented Mrs. Bell's husband from being flogged for another sailor's theft. She had not forgotten the debt. Now she held a sealed message. A courier from Newgate Prison. Your Grace. Julian broke the seal and read. His expression changed before he reached the bottom. What has happened? Eliza demanded. He read it again. Mrs. Bell answered when he did not. The prison governor requests confirmation of His Grace's removal order. Eliza felt the room narrow around her. What removal order? Julian handed her the message. At 11:40, 6 armed men had arrived at Newgate with official papers, authorizing the immediate transfer of Sir Thomas Harcourt. The order carried Julian's seal and directed the governor to surrender the prisoner without recording his destination. Where did they take him? Eliza asked. The governor does not know. Julian said. A carriage thundered across the street below. Eliza reached the window as a black coach swept past Ashbourne House. Her father's silver falcon had been painted on its door, but the crest was reversed, the unmistakable mistake of someone who had copied it from a wax impression. Beside the driver sat Mr. Silas Crowe, the government clerk whose testimony had sent Sir Thomas to the gallows. Crowe looked up at the window. Then he drew one finger across his throat. Julian seized his coat. Remain here. No. Eliza was already moving toward the door. That carriage is not taking my father to another prison. How can you know? Because a legal transfer protects a condemned man until sunrise. She met his eyes. Someone forged your signature, stole your crest, and removed the only prisoner who could expose them. They are not carrying my father to his execution. From the darkness outside came a single gunshot. They are taking him somewhere the truth can die with him. The gunshot shattered the lantern above Ashbourne House's stable gate. Glass rained over the courtyard as the black carriage disappeared into the darkness. The horses below reared against their traces, delaying the grooms just long enough for the kidnappers to gain the next street. Julian reached the courtyard first. Harness the bays to my curricle. They fired to prevent pursuit. Mrs. Bell warned. Then pursuit is precisely what they expect. Eliza said. Julian turned on her. You are not coming. Crowe worked beneath my father for 6 years. I know the routes he knows, the codes he copied, and the places he might use. You will slow me down. You do not even know where he is going. That silenced him. Less than 3 minutes later, Julian drove the curricle through the gate with Eliza beside him. The matched bays surged forward, iron shoes striking sparks from the paving stones. The kidnapper's carriage was already out of sight. Julian followed the main road east, toward Newgate. If Crowe intends to disguise the removal as an official transfer, he will return your father to a government building. No, he showed himself to us. To frighten you. To make us follow the wrong carriage. Eliza held the side rail as the curricle swung around a corner. She thought of the reversed falcon painted on the coach. Whoever prepared it had copied the Harcourt crest from a wax impression rather than a drawing. That required access to evidence collected during her father's trial. It also meant the coach had been prepared before Julian's forged warrant arrived. This was planned before tonight, she said. The marriage proposal. The warrant and my father's removal are parts of the same design. You have no proof of that. Not yet. They found the black carriage abandoned near St. Paul's. Its doors stood open. The Harcourt falcon had been scraped from one panel, and the harness had been cut away. There was no prisoner inside. Julian jumped down and touched the wheel hub, still warm. Eliza examined the floor. A dark smear marked the step. But when she rubbed it between her fingers, it crumbled. Paint, she said, not blood. The carriage had been left where pursuers would discover it quickly. Even the false blood had been placed to suggest that Sir Thomas had been dragged into one of the surrounding alleys. Julian scanned the street. They could have changed vehicles anywhere. They would need privacy, fresh horses and access to water. Why water? Because Crow is not trying to transport my father. He is trying to dispose of him. Eliza crossed to the rear wheel. One spoke carried a streak of yellow clay mixed with coal dust. That combination did not come from the paved streets around Newgate. Her father had once made her memorize the surfaces surrounding every diplomatic relay point in London. Gravel at the northern courtyards, chalk near the western roads, coal dust and river clay at the old warehouses below Blackfriars. Then she noticed a white mark on the inside of the carriage roof. 3 narrow lines crossed by a fourth. A courier's notation. Broken wharf, she said. Julian looked inside. Those are scratches. They mean the vehicle is to be exchanged at the 4th warehouse below the bridge. My father used the same notation in Lisbon because written addresses could be intercepted. You are certain? No. Eliza faced him. But my father has fewer than 5 hours. Can you afford to wait until I am? Julian cut the abandoned carriage's remaining horse free and tied it behind the curricle. Then he climbed back into the driver's seat. This time, he did not order Eliza to remain behind. Smoke was rising above Broken Wharf when they arrived. The 4th warehouse stood with its river doors open. A covered government coach had been pushed inside, and flames were spreading beneath its wheels. 2 men ran toward a waiting skiff while Silas Crow stood at the water stairs, watching the fire take hold. Eliza, Julian shouted. She had already jumped from the curricle. Crow saw her and raised a pistol. Julian fired first. His shot struck the wooden railing beside Crow's hand, sending the weapon into the river. Crow stumbled into the skiff, and the oarsman pulled away from the steps. Julian could have fired again. Instead, he turned toward the burning coach. Sir Thomas was chained inside it. Smoke poured through the barred windows. Eliza could see her father slumped against the interior wall, his gray head resting at an unnatural angle. Julian pulled at the door. Locked. A burning timber crashed behind them, scattering sparks across the warehouse floor. Eliza crouched beneath the driver's bench. Government prisoner coaches used a single iron rod to secure both the door and the interior chain. Her father had shown her the mechanism years ago, after discovering that foreign agents could trap diplomatic couriers inside their own vehicles. The release pin should have been beneath the rear axle. Heat scorched her cheek as she reached under the coach. Her fingers found the iron bracket, then the circular head of the pin. It would not move. Eliza, get back! If we break the door, the chain remains locked. She pulled the decorative crest plate from the coach's side and wedged its thin edge beneath the pin. The metal bent. She shifted her weight. Ignoring the heat biting through her gloves, the pin tore free. Inside the coach, the chain fell loose. Julian wrenched open the door and lifted Sir Thomas over his shoulder. They stumbled clear as the fire reached the oil-soaked cushions. An instant later, flames swallowed the entire compartment. Eliza dropped beside her father. Sir Thomas was breathing, but blood darkened the hair above his left temple. His wrists had been cut by the irons, and a purple mark circled his throat. They tried to strangle him before the fire, she said. Julian removed his coat and placed it beneath Sir Thomas's head. Then the coach was intended to destroy the evidence. Something gleamed beside the broken chain. Eliza reached into the dirt and recovered a small brass screw, no larger than the end of her thumb. It was too finely made to belong to the carriage. A crescent-shaped nick marked its head, and one side carried the stamped number 4. She concealed it inside her glove as hoofbeats filled the lane. Bow Street officers entered the warehouse, followed by a tall, silver-haired man in a dark blue coat, Lord Edmund Carow, Undersecretary at the Home Office. He showed no surprise at finding the coach in flames. "Thank God you anticipated the escape." "Ashbourne," Carow said, "London will know that you prevented a convicted traitor from fleeing the country." "Eliza found him," Julian replied. Carow's gaze moved to her. It lingered for half a second too long. "How fortunate." "It was not fortune," she said. "No, of course not." His tone made the words an indulgence rather than an acknowledgement. A daughter's desperation can occasionally resemble insight. He ordered the officers to search the warehouse and instructed his physician to examine Sir Thomas. Within minutes, the official account had begun forming around Eliza. The Duke of Ashbourne had pursued an escaped traitor, discovered him at the river, and prevented his flight. No one recorded that Sir Thomas had been chained inside a burning coach. Carow extended his hand toward Julian. "The false execution warrant must be returned to the Home Office." "It will remain in my custody," Julian said. Carow's polite expression tightened. "It is government property. It bears my forged signature. And Lady Eliza has already handled it without authority. Its value as evidence may be compromised." Eliza understood the warning. Carow was not merely dismissing her contribution. He was preparing to blame her for damaging the very proof she had discovered. Julian looked at the officers surrounding them, then at Sir Thomas lying unconscious on the ground. "The warrant remains with me," he repeated. It was the first time he had placed his authority between Eliza and the government that had condemned her father. Carow bowed. "As you wish, Your Grace." But his eyes stayed on Eliza's closed hand. Sir Thomas was taken back to Ashbourne House under Julian's guard. A physician stitched the wound above his temple and declared that moving him again before morning might kill him. While Julian argued with officials downstairs, Eliza returned to the study. She placed the forged death warrant beside the marriage contract and held both documents against the candle. The two signatures aligned perfectly. Not merely the letters. The tiny break before the final stroke, the faint blot beneath the V, and even the accidental hook where Julian's quill had caught the paper, all occupied precisely the same positions. No man signed his name identically twice. The death warrant had been traced from the marriage contract Julian signed that evening. Eliza remembered who had witnessed the proposal, folded the contract and carried it from the drawing room to be registered. Lord Edmund Carow, the man who had reached the burning warehouse before anyone had summoned him. Julian entered the study before Eliza could separate the two documents. His gaze moved from the candle to the overlapping signatures, then to her face. "What have you found?" Eliza held the marriage contract and death warrant against the light. "No person reproduces the same accidental blot twice. The signature on the warrant was traced directly from the contract you signed tonight." Julian examined the alignment without touching either page. The faint hook beneath the V, the break before the final stroke, and the tiny spot of ink beside his title matched perfectly. His expression tightened. "Who handled the contract after I signed it?" Eliza asked. "Carow witnessed it," he replied. "He offered to deliver it to the Home Office registry. And less than 3 hours later, he arrived at Broken Wharf before anyone summoned him. Lord Carow has served the crown for 30 years. That gives him experience. Not innocence." Julian lowered the pages. "He took me into his household after my father died. He arranged Nathaniel's commission. He was the man who first brought me evidence against Sir Thomas. Then he controlled what evidence you saw." Anger flashed in Julian's eyes. "You are asking me to accuse the man who raised me because two signatures resemble one another. I am asking you to investigate him because someone used your grief to condemn my father." The words struck hard enough that Julian turned away. Eliza opened her hand and placed the small brass screw from the burned carriage on the desk. "I found this beside my father's chain. It does not belong to the coach." Julian picked it up. The crescent-shaped nick caught the light, a retaining screw from a copying frame. He said, "The Home Office uses such frames for maps and foreign documents. Stamped number 4. The number identifies the instrument. Then there will be a record of which department possesses copying frame number 4. Before Julian could answer, A weak sound came from the adjoining guest chamber. Eliza ran to her father's bedside. Sir Thomas's eyes had opened, though they could not remain focused. His bandaged head rested against Julian's folded coat. "Papa?" He moved his lips. Eliza bent close enough to feel his breath. "Not the route," he whispered. "The margins." "What margins?" Nathaniel saw them? His fingers closed feebly around her wrist. "Blue Atlas, Harcourt House. Do not let them—" His body seized with a violent cough. The physician pushed Eliza aside and ordered her to give him air. Sir Thomas fell unconscious again, before she could ask what Nathaniel had seen. Julian stood in the doorway, his face stripped of color at the mention of his brother. "Nathaniel died before my investigation began. My father believed he discovered something first, or he is confused from the blow. You heard him. I heard an injured man speak 7 words. The front bell rang below, followed by the arrival of several men. Mrs. Bell appeared at the door. Lord Carew has returned. Your Grace. He has brought a magistrate and 2 Bow Street officers. Carew entered the guest chamber carrying a leather portfolio. Behind him came Magistrate Henshaw, a narrow-faced man Eliza recognized from her father's trial. Lady Eliza Harcourt, Henshaw announced. I have received evidence connecting you to the unlawful removal of Sir Thomas from Newgate. Carew opened the portfolio and removed a folded letter. This was found in Lady Eliza's room at Harcourt House. The page bore her handwriting and her private seal. It instructed Silas Crowe to remove Sir Thomas from prison, take him to Broken Wharf, and arrange a vessel for France. A final line promised Crowe £500 after their escape. Eliza read it twice. The imitation was excellent. Whoever wrote it had copied entire phrases from the petitions she had sent to the Home Office. I did not write this. You possess the strongest motive to free the prisoner. Henshaw said. You also entered His Grace's study, opened restricted correspondence, and concealed an execution warrant on your person. A warrant bearing a forged signature. Carew sighed. A claim based solely upon Lady Eliza's private interpretation. The signatures match exactly, she said, because His Grace signed both. No? Julian said. Every face turned toward him. He placed the warrant and marriage contract on the table. The death warrant was traced. I will swear to that. Carew's composure did not break, but his gaze moved toward the brass screw beside the papers. And what is that? Eliza closed her fingers over it. Something recovered from the burning carriage. Then it belongs to the Crown investigation. So does the copying frame from which it came. Carew looked at her hand, and she saw calculation replace courtesy. Magistrate. Lady Eliza has removed physical evidence from the scene and refuses to surrender it. Her conduct is no longer merely suspicious. Henshaw extended his hand. You will give me the object. Eliza looked at Julian. If he trusted her, he would refuse. If he trusted Carew, the first physical clue would disappear into the same offices that produced the forged warrant. Julian's silence lasted only a moment, but it was long enough to wound. Give it to me, he said. Eliza placed the screw in his palm. Julian wrapped it in a clean sheet of paper, sealed the packet with his signet, and handed it to Henshaw. It will be examined in my presence tomorrow. By the Home Office? Eliza asked. By an independent instrument maker. Tomorrow may be too late. This is the only way to preserve its admissibility. Henshaw ordered an officer to take possession of the sealed packet. Carew's mouth curved almost imperceptibly. Eliza understood that Julian believed he had protected the evidence. He had instead placed it inside a system Carew controlled. Henshaw then produced a second document, a warrant authorizing the search of Harcourt House for foreign correspondence, escape funds, and any papers connected to French agents. The search would begin immediately. My father said something about a blue atlas. Eliza said. Carew glanced toward the unconscious Sir Thomas. A convicted traitor's delirium is not a legal objection. You knew he had spoken? The room became still. Carew recovered quickly. I assumed you had questioned him, but Eliza had never told him Sir Thomas regained consciousness. Neither had the physician. Julian or Mrs. Bell. Carew had come prepared to search Harcourt House before he could have known about the Blue Atlas, unless that atlas was what the abduction had failed to obtain. No officer enters my father's map room without me, Eliza said. You are not in a position to make conditions. Henshaw replied. Until this inquiry is concluded, you will remain confined to Ashbourne House. She will remain under my authority. Julian said. That is what I said. Henshaw answered. The distinction struck Eliza with humiliating force. Julian had offered marriage as protection, yet even without the ceremony, his name had become her prison. He ordered Mrs. Bell to escort her to the East guest suite and station a footman outside. You believe the letter? Eliza said. I believe someone forged it. Julian replied. I do not yet know whether you were that person. The honesty hurt more than an accusation. As Mrs. Bell led her upstairs, Eliza heard Caro instruct the officers to depart for Harcourt House. Through the landing window, she watched 3 carriages roll from the courtyard carrying men, lanterns, and sealed evidence chests. The search party possessed legal authority to open every cabinet and remove every document. It also possessed enough lamp oil to destroy whatever Caro feared. Mrs. Bell unlocked the East suite, but before closing the door, she pressed something into Eliza's hand, a small iron key. The old servant's stair ends behind the wardrobe. She whispered. Sir Thomas had it built when he worked for the Foreign Office. Eliza waited until the footman's steps settled outside. Then she moved the wardrobe and found a narrow door hidden in the paneling. From below came Julian's voice ordering additional guards around the house. From the street came the sound of Caro's search party turning toward Harcourt House. Eliza now faced 2 choices: remain confined and lose the Blue Atlas, or escape through the servants' passage and confirm every accusation made against her. She inserted the key into the hidden lock. Before she could turn it, smoke rose beyond the eastern rooftops from the direction of her family home. Eliza turned the key, slipped through the hidden door, and descended the servants' stair while smoke thickened above the eastern rooftops. The passage ended behind a panel beside Ashbourne House's rear pantry, allowing her to reach the stable yard without crossing the guarded hall. She expected to steal a horse. Instead, she found Julian already seated in the curricle, reins in one hand and a pistol in the other. Mrs. Bell told you? Eliza asked. No, I saw the fire. His eyes moved to the hidden doorway behind her. Get in. You ordered me confined, and I was wrong? It was not an apology, but it was the first admission he had given her. Eliza climbed beside him, and the bays launched into the street. Caro's officers have a lawful search warrant, Julian said as they raced east. If we interfere, Henshaw can accuse us both of obstructing the crown, then turn back. Julian drove faster. Flames had broken through the roof of Harcourt House by the time they arrived. Neighbors formed a line from the courtyard pump, passing buckets toward servants who threw water against the eastern wing. 2 Bow Street officers stood at the gate, preventing anyone from entering, while Magistrate Henshaw shouted that the fire began when a lamp overturned during the search. Where is Lord Caro? Julian demanded. He returned to the Home Office. Henshaw replied. His men are attempting to rescue the evidence. Eliza looked toward the burning wing. The fire had not started near the front rooms where the officers first entered. It had begun in the map room at the rear, the exact room her father had named. Who was inside? She asked. The search clerk and 2 officers escaped. My father's caretaker sleeps above the map room. Henshaw blocked her path. No one is permitted to enter. A window shattered on the 2nd floor, and Mr. Pritchard appeared through the smoke. The elderly caretaker gripped the sill with one hand, while flames rolled across the ceiling behind him. Eliza ran toward the house. Henshaw seized her arm, but Julian struck his hand away. Touch her again, the Duke said, and you will explain to the Home Secretary why a man burned alive while you protected a search warrant. Julian ordered the bucket line redirected toward the eastern stairs. But Eliza knew the water would never reach Pritchard in time. The main staircase ended beneath the burning corridor. There is another way, she said. Her father had converted an old priest's passage into an emergency route between the map room and the garden wall. As a child, Eliza had carried coded papers through it during diplomatic drills, laughing whenever Sir Thomas timed her. Now smoke poured from the concealed entrance behind the dead vines. She pulled aside the wooden lattice and found the narrow stone door. The passage opens beneath the map room hearth, she told Julian. It may still be clear. You will show me the entrance. Then remain outside. Pritchard will trust my voice before yours. And if the passage collapses, then arguing here will not strengthen it. They entered together. Heat pressed through the walls as they crawled beneath the house. At the final turn, smoke curled along the ceiling, but the stone floor remained cool. Eliza pushed upward against the iron plate beneath the hearth. It did not move. Julian braced both hands beside hers. On three, the plate lifted just enough for Eliza to wedge a broken stone beneath it. Together they forced the hatch open and climbed into the map room. Fire had consumed the curtains and spread across two cabinets. Yet the center table had been stripped clean before the flames reached it. Someone had removed the documents and then poured oil along the shelves. Eliza could smell it beneath the smoke. This was no overturned lamp, she said. A beam fell behind them. Julian caught her around the waist and pulled her clear as burning plaster struck the floor. For one breath, they stood pressed together. His arm locked around her and his face inches from hers. His grip loosened, but neither moved immediately. Pritchard, Eliza said. Julian released her. They found the caretaker collapsed on the upper landing, with a wet cloth tied across his mouth. He had reached the window but lacked the strength to climb through it. Julian lifted him while Eliza led them toward the servants' stair on the western side. Flames blocked the lower steps. The window, Julian ordered. Eliza tore a curtain cord free and tied it around Pritchard's chest. Men in the courtyard raised a ladder. As Julian lowered the caretaker toward them, Pritchard reached the ground safely. But before Eliza could follow, an explosion in the map room sent fire across the corridor. The ladder shifted away from the wall. Julian shielded Eliza with his body as glass, and burning wood flew through the window. The hidden passage, she shouted. They returned through the smoke. Part of the hearth had collapsed over the opening, leaving a gap barely wide enough for one person. Julian pushed Eliza toward it. Go. Not without the atlas. The room is burning. That is why the fire was set. She crossed to the stone cabinet behind her father's desk. The doors stood open and empty. The search officers had already removed every visible book. Blue ash covered the bottom shelf, suggesting the atlas had been burned. Then Eliza remembered Sir Thomas's habit of hiding important documents in places too ordinary to invite curiosity. The cabinet's wooden plinth was thicker than the others. She kicked away the burning fragments, found a recessed catch, and pulled. A shallow drawer opened beneath the cabinet. Inside lay a large atlas bound in faded blue leather. Julian stared at it. Your father built a fireproof compartment. He trusted stone more than governments. The ceiling groaned above them. Eliza wrapped the atlas in a wool hearthrug and crawled into the hidden passage. Julian followed seconds before the map room floor collapsed. They emerged in the garden coughing. Their clothes blackened, and Julian's left hand blistered, where he had shielded her from the falling embers. Henshaw hurried toward them. That book is evidence seized under Crown authority. Julian placed himself between the magistrate and Eliza. Your officers set fire to the room they were ordered to search. En accident? There were oil trails across the shelves. Henshaw's face tightened. Surrender the atlas. No. You are obstructing an official investigation. Julian removed his signet ring and held it out. Then record that Julian Vale, Duke of Ashbourne, takes personal custody of this object and accepts responsibility for its preservation. If you wish to arrest me, do it before every person in this courtyard. Henshaw looked at the neighbors, servants and firemen watching them. Arresting a duke in public required courage he did not possess. This will reach the Home Secretary, he warned. I intend it to. Julian's choice cost him more than reputation. By defying the search warrant, he had placed his title, political influence and freedom beside Eliza's damaged name. She saw that he understood the risk and had chosen it anyway. They carried the atlas to a stone bench beyond the reach of the fire. Most pages contained ordinary maps, but the margins appeared empty. My father said Nathaniel saw them, Eliza whispered. Julian touched his brother's name written inside the cover. This is Nathaniel's hand. A date beneath it showed that Captain Nathaniel Vale had examined the atlas 2 days before his fatal journey. Eliza turned the pages toward the heat of the burning house. Brown letters slowly surfaced in the margins. Sir Thomas had written them in lemon solution. Invisible until warmed, numbers appeared beside diplomatic routes, followed by dates, payment marks, and the initials of officials who requested unauthorized copies. On the calipage, Nathaniel had added a sentence in pencil. The route was absent when Harcourt sealed the dispatch. C. Ordered copying frame 4, opened after midnight. Julian read it twice. His injured hand began to tremble. Nathaniel knew my father was innocent. Eliza said. He suspected it. Julian replied. But the certainty that had sustained his hatred was breaking, and someone killed him before he could report what he saw. Julian closed his eyes. I condemned your father using the document Nathaniel had already challenged. Eliza wanted to comfort him. But compassion could not erase responsibility. Your grief made you vulnerable? It did not force you to deny me access to the evidence. He looked at her through the smoke. No. I chose that. Before he could say more, a carriage entered the courtyard. Lord Caro stepped down, surveyed the burning house, and then saw the blue atlas in Eliza's hands. For the first time, fear crossed his face. It vanished almost immediately. How extraordinary, he said, approaching with 4 armed officers. Lady Eliza escapes lawful confinement, interferes with a crown search, and emerges from the fire, carrying the very book my men were ordered to find. His gaze shifted to Julian. And you have now given her the protection of your name without requiring her to marry you? Julian stood beside Eliza. Nathaniel wrote in this atlas. Caro's eyes settled on the exposed marginal note. He knew exactly what they had discovered. Then he smiled. In that case, Your Grace. I am afraid your brother has just become evidence against you both. Caro signaled, and the 4 officers surrounded Eliza and Julian before either could move. Captain Nathaniel's handwriting was found in the private atlas of a convicted traitor. He announced loudly enough for the servants and neighbors to hear. That does not clear Sir Thomas. It proves the Duke of Ashbourne's brother participated in the same conspiracy. Julian stepped toward him. Nathaniel wrote that the courier route was added after Sir Thomas sealed the dispatch. Or Lady Eliza added those words tonight. Caro pointed toward the burning house. She escaped confinement, entered a room containing secret papers, and emerged carrying a document that conveniently absolves her father. You were the only witness beside her. The writing is my brother's. Your grief once persuaded you of Sir Thomas's guilt. Perhaps Lady Eliza has now persuaded you of his innocence. Caro's accusation shifted every fact into place against them. Eliza's knowledge of documents became the ability to forge Nathaniel's hand. Julian's recognition became the judgment of a man compromised by affection. Their rescue of the atlas became evidence that they had planted it. Henshaw ordered Eliza to surrender the book. Julian refused. But Caro produced a sealed directive from the Home Secretary, suspending Julian from all government duties pending investigation. Ashbourne House and its accounts would be placed under temporary supervision. You arranged this before the fire? Eliza said, the directive was issued after you obstructed the search. It carries a seal that requires the Home Secretary's personal press. He has not left his residence tonight. Caro smiled. You see conspiracy in every seal now? A 5th carriage entered the courtyard. Silas Crowe stepped down between 2 Bow Street runners. His wrists loosely bound, there was no wound on him and no river water on his clothes. His supposed capture looked more like a scheduled arrival. Mr. Crowe surrendered near Westminster. Caro said, he has confessed that Lady Eliza paid him to remove Sir Thomas from Newgate. Crowe refused to meet Eliza's eyes. Henshaw read his signed statement aloud. It claimed Eliza ordered the escape, selected Broken Wharf, and instructed Crowe to burn the government coach. If pursuit came too close, you threatened my father in front of Ashbourne House. Eliza said, I warned you to remain silent. Crowe replied, when you followed us, your own plan failed. Who painted the reversed crest? His expression flickered. I hired a coach painter. Name him. A man near Covent Garden. Which street? Crowe looked toward Caro. That single glance told Eliza where his courage came from. Caro interrupted before she could press harder. The details may be tested at the inquiry. Then let him explain why the transfer order carried Julian's stolen seal. He says you provided it. Julian's voice cut through the courtyard. Enough. Crowe knew where to find the blue atlas. Yet Eliza did not understand her father's warning until an hour ago. His account is false. Caro lowered his voice. You still have a choice. Julian. Surrender Lady Eliza and the atlas. I will tell the Home Secretary that your actions arose from shock and misplaced chivalry. Your suspension may remain private, and if I refuse, your name will be joined to the Harcourt treason. Your estates will be frozen. Your seat in the Lords challenged, and Nathaniel remembered as a conspirator rather than a murdered officer. Julian looked at the burning remains of Harcourt House. Then at Eliza. She expected calculation. A duke had been trained from birth to protect his title because hundreds of lives depended upon it. Caro had designed the choice so that abandoning her could be disguised as duty. Julian removed the ribbon of his government office from beneath his waistcoat and dropped it into the mud. "Record my refusal publicly," he said. "Lady Eliza remains under my protection. The atlas remains in my custody until it is examined before the lords." The surrounding crowd went silent. Caro's expression sharpened. "You would sacrifice your family for the daughter of the man who killed your brother?" "I would sacrifice my office before I condemn another person using evidence you refuse to test." For the first time, Julian had not merely doubted Caro. He had opposed him where witnesses could remember it. Henshaw ordered the officers forward. Julian could resist 4 men, perhaps even 6. But doing so would allow Caro to call the confrontation an armed rebellion. Eliza placed the atlas in Julian's hands. "Let them take it." He looked at her in disbelief. "If we fight for possession, they will say we feared examination. They will destroy it, then make them answer for its custody." Julian wrapped the atlas in the scorched hearthrug, sealed the knot with his signet, and required Henshaw, Caro, and 2 household servants to sign a written receipt describing its condition. Eliza watched Caro sign last. He wrote with his left hand, pressing hard enough to score the paper beneath. The crescent-shaped scar at the base of his thumb caught her attention. It matched the curve cut into the brass screw from copying frame 4, not proof, but evidence that he had repeatedly tightened the damaged fitting himself. The officers carried the atlas away. Caro ordered Sir Thomas returned to Newgate as soon as the physician declared him fit to move. "His execution remains set for 6, he said. "That is less than 2 hours away." Eliza replied, "Then I suggest you use your remaining time to pray." Julian was placed under guard at Ashbourne House, while Eliza was confined to the adjoining drawing room, so neither could communicate privately. By 5 o'clock, printed broadsheets appeared outside the gates, declaring that the Duke of Ashbourne had aided a traitor's daughter in manufacturing evidence against the crown. Caro's version of the night had reached the presses before Harcourt House stopped burning. At 5:15, Henshaw returned carrying the sealed hearthrug. The knot had been cut. Inside lay the blue atlas, its pages soaked with water and blackened beyond recognition. "The evidence carriage overturned beside a fire engine," he explained. "Un regrettable accident." The marginal writing had vanished. Nathaniel's pencil note had been torn away. The blue leather cover split, and Sir Thomas's hidden records reduced to pulp. The brass screw sent for independent examination had disappeared as well. Henshaw claimed its packet arrived empty, despite Julian's intact seal. Every physical clue they possessed had now passed through official custody and emerged useless. Sir Thomas was removed from Ashbourne House 20 minutes later. Eliza saw the prison coach from the drawing room window. He remained unconscious as 2 guards carried him out, which meant he could neither defend himself nor reveal what else Nathaniel had discovered. Julian stood behind her under guard. "I gave Caro the screw," he said. "I told you it would disappear, and I told you that legal custody would preserve it." His voice was stripped of pride. "I was wrong again." Eliza turned from the window. "Regret will not stop the execution. I can demand an emergency hearing before the lords. Caro controls the papers, they will see. Then what remains?" Eliza looked at the receipt signed in the Harcourt courtyard. Caro's name cut deeply into the page. She remembered his left hand, the crescent scar, and the damaged brass screw. Then another inconsistency surfaced. At the fire, Caro had called the atlas the very book my men were ordered to find. Yet the search warrant Henshaw showed them authorized the seizure of foreign correspondence. It never named a blue atlas. Only 4 people had heard Sir Thomas whisper those words. Eliza, Julian, the physician, and Mrs. Bell. The physician had remained beside Sir Thomas. Mrs. Bell had never left Ashbourne House. Caro had known the exact object before arriving at Harcourt House because Crow, or another accomplice, had already told him where Sir Thomas concealed it. That knowledge could not be explained by any official warrant. "Request your hearing," Eliza said. "Tell the lords that we recovered a second page from the atlas before surrendering it." Julian understood immediately. There was no second page. Caro does not know that. Say Nathaniel named the official who ordered copying frame 4 opened and that the page will be authenticated at the hearing. He will search this house. Let him, Mrs. Bell saw him carry the signed marriage contract away. Pritchard saw which search officer entered the map room before the fire. If Caro believes a surviving page joins those facts, he must either discredit them publicly or destroy one of the witnesses. Julian's face hardened. You intend to make him act before the hearing. I intend to make him choose a lie he cannot change later. Outside, the bells began striking. 5:30. 30 minutes remained before Sir Thomas reached the gallows. Julian summoned the guard and demanded paper for an emergency petition to the House of Lords. Eliza watched him write the bait in his own hand. Captain Nathaniel Vale's surviving statement will identify the official who altered the Calais dispatch. The moment the message left Ashbourne House, a second carriage followed the courier from the opposite side of the street. Caro had taken the bait, but Eliza could not yet know whether he would attack the false page. The real witnesses, or her father first. Julian sent the petition through Ashbourne House's front gate in the hands of a liveried courier, exactly where Caro's watchers could see it. A second copy left 5 minutes later, concealed inside the physician's medicine case, and reached the Lord Chancellor without being followed. The first courier had traveled only 3 streets when Silas Crow's carriage blocked his path. Crow pulled him from the saddle and searched his coat for Nathaniel's supposed surviving page. But Julian's 2 outriders closed the alley before he could escape. They found no weapon bearing Caro's name. Only a Home Office entry pass issued that morning and signed by the Undersecretary himself. Crow insisted he had stolen it. Julian ordered him held by his own servants rather than returned to the Bow Street officers who had already pretended to arrest him once. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bell left Ashbourne House dressed as a laundrywoman, and Pritchard traveled beneath blankets in a coal wagon. Each carried a written account sealed before separate witnesses. Caro's men stopped the decoy carriage, transporting 2 empty evidence boxes, while the real witnesses entered the Palace of Westminster through a servants' court. At 6 o'clock, the Lord Chancellor issued a temporary stay of execution based upon Julian's sworn claim that an official death warrant bore his forged signature. Sir Thomas was removed from the scaffold with the rope already around his neck. The stay would last only until the emergency inquiry ended. If Eliza failed, her father would return to the gallows before noon. The chamber of the House of Lords was crowded when she entered under guard. Peers who had voted to condemn Sir Thomas watched her from the red benches. Government clerks filled the rear gallery, and newspapermen waited outside for every whispered development. Caro stood at the central table with Magistrate Henshaw, and the water-damaged atlas displayed before him like the remains of a defeated enemy. He attacked before Julian could present the petition. This inquiry exists because a convicted traitor's daughter forged evidence, arranged her father's escape, and corrupted a grieving duke, he declared. He produced Eliza's fabricated letter to Crow, Crow's signed confession, and the official inventory claiming copying frame 4 had been stored at Harcourt House before Sir Thomas's arrest. The accused possessed the motive, the skill, and the physical equipment required to imitate his Grace's signature and Captain Nathaniel's handwriting. Several lords murmured their agreement. Caro then held up the ruined atlas. The supposed invisible writing cannot be examined because Lady Eliza removed this book from a burning room and exposed it to uncontrolled heat and water. We possess only her description of what it once contained. Julian rose. I read Nathaniel's words myself. And your judgment has become inseparable from hers? Caro turned toward the benches. Last night, the Duke offered Lady Eliza marriage. Within hours, he obstructed officers, withheld government property, and abandoned his office to protect her. His actions demonstrate devotion, not reliability. The cruelty of the argument lay in its plausibility. Julian's costly choice had proven his moral change to Eliza, but Caro presented it as evidence of corruption. The Lord Chancellor asked whether Julian wished to answer. He looked at Eliza instead. Lady Eliza discovered the forged warrant, found the abandoned carriage, identified Broken Wharf, and recovered the atlas. The reasoning is hers. She should present it. Caro objected that a woman accused of treason possessed no standing to question Crown officials. The Lord Chancellor replied that a woman facing the gallows possessed every reason to expose a false accusation. Eliza stepped to the central table. Lord Caro, when did you first see the marriage contract signed by the Duke of Ashbourne? I witnessed the signature shortly after 8. What did you do with the contract? I left it on the drawing-room table. Mrs. Bell was brought forward. She testified that she saw Caro fold the contract, place it inside his blue portfolio, and say he would deliver it for registration. Caro dismissed her as a servant indebted to Sir Thomas. Elisa did not argue. At what time did you return the contract? Before 9? To whom? A registry clerk? Name him. Caro paused. Mr. Mercer. Henshaw searched the registry list and found no Mercer assigned that night. Caro claimed the clerk had been temporarily transferred. The first lie had been fixed in public. Eliza moved to the forged death warrant. This document arrived at Ashbourne House after 10. Its signature duplicates the marriage contract down to an accidental blot. A natural signature cannot repeat every defect. Therefore, the warrant was traced after Lord Caro took possession of the original. Caro replied that Eliza could have traced it herself after entering Julian's study. Then I would need access to a government copying frame. She said, "Your inventory states frame 4 was stored at Harcourt House." Correct. Yet no copying frame was found during the search. It may have been destroyed in the fire. Your search began before the fire. Which officer recorded seeing it? Caro consulted Henshaw. But no search record mentioned the machine. The second lie now required a missing object to support it. Eliza asked Henshaw to read the Harcourt House search warrant aloud. It authorized the seizure of foreign correspondence, money and cipher materials. It did not mention an atlas. When Lord Caro arrived at the fire, Eliza said, "He called the book in my hands, the very book my men were ordered to find. How did he know the search concerned a blue atlas when the warrant never named one?" Caro answered that Sir Thomas's possessions had been catalogued months earlier, then produced the catalogue. No blue atlas appeared in it. Perhaps one of the search officers described it to me. You arrived before any officer left the courtyard. A messenger reached me. Name him. Caro chose the same non-existent clerk, Mr. Mercer. The chamber grew quieter. Eliza then called Pritchard. The caretaker testified that he saw one search officer carry a large wooden case into the map room rather than remove it. The case bore a brass plate stamped with the number 4. Moments later, Pritchard smelled lamp oil and found the upper corridor locked from below. "Could you identify the officer?" Eliza asked. Pritchard pointed toward one of Caro's clerks in the gallery. The man tried to leave, but the parliamentary doorkeepers stopped him. Caro denounced Pritchard as a servant attempting to protect his employer. Eliza allowed the insult to stand. "Lord Caro, did you authorize Silas Crowe to enter Home Office buildings this morning? Crowe escaped lawful custody?" "I issued him nothing." Julian presented the pass taken from Crowe in the alley. Caro examined the signature and declared it forged. "Was Crowe acting for you when he attacked the Duke's courier?" Eliza asked. "No. What did he expect to find?" "I cannot speak for a criminal. He searched for Captain Nathaniel's surviving page. There is no surviving page." The answer came too quickly. Eliza faced the Lords. "Our petition stated that a page would be authenticated at this hearing. It did not state where it was kept, what it contained, or whether Crowe knew of it. Yet he attacked the visible courier rather than the physician carrying the actual petition. Someone who read the bait sent him." Caro's control finally slipped. "This performance does not change the physical facts. The atlas is destroyed. The brass screw is missing. No surviving page exists. No witness saw me alter the dispatch, operate a copying frame, or order the Harcourt fire. You have built suspicion, Lady Eliza, not proof." He was right, and he knew it. Mrs. Bell proved access to the marriage contract. Pritchard proved that frame 4 entered the map room. Crowe's pass proved contact with the Home Office. The false warrant proved copying. But none of those facts alone established who operated the machine, who altered the Calais route, or why Nathaniel died. Caro turned to the Lord Chancellor. The stay of execution should be lifted immediately. Eliza looked toward Julian. This was the moment their plan required Caro to overcommit. "Before you decide," she said, "I ask Lord Caro one final question. Where is copying frame 4 now?" "Destroyed at Harcourt House." "You are certain?" Its brass retaining screw was recovered from the burning carriage and later lost. The machine itself perished in the map room fire. Eliza had never publicly stated where the screw was found. Only she, Julian, and Caro had seen it before official custody. More importantly, Pritchard testified that the wooden case entered the map room, not that the machine remained inside when the fire began. Caro had bound himself to a precise claim. Frame 4 had burned. Eliza turned toward the Lord Chancellor. "My lord." The parliamentary sergeant was instructed to search the private copying room adjoining Lord Caro's Home Office chamber while this hearing proceeded. "Has he returned?" The great doors opened. 2 sergeants entered carrying a scorched wooden case recovered from beneath the floorboards of Caro's locked office. Inside stood a brass copying frame marked with the number 4. One retaining screw was missing, and beside the empty joint curved the same crescent-shaped tool mark Eliza had seen on the fragment from the carriage. Behind the sergeants walked the independent instrument maker Julian had summoned hours earlier. He bowed to the chamber, opened his measuring case, and said, "My lords, if the missing screw fits this frame, I can also show you which documents were copied upon it and whose hand tightened it last." The instrument maker placed copying frame 4 on the central table and examined the empty brass joint through a magnifying lens. "The missing screw was removed recently," he said. "The exposed metal has not yet tarnished." Caro folded his arms. "Then your examination proves only that a screw is missing. The screw itself may answer more." At the Lord Chancellor's order, parliamentary sergeants brought Silas Crowe into the chamber and searched him before the assembled lords. Inside the lining of his left sleeve, they found a small paper packet bearing Julian's broken seal. The brass screw Eliza recovered from the burning carriage lay within it. Crowe's face collapsed as the instrument maker threaded the piece into frame 4. It turned smoothly until the crescent-shaped nick aligned perfectly with the matching scar on the joint. "This screw belongs to this machine," the instrument maker declared. He scraped a dark residue from its threads and dissolved it in a shallow dish of spirits. Black tracing wax spread across the liquid. The same substance clung to the frame's pressure plate. Beneath that plate, protected from the Harcourt fire because Caro had removed the machine before ordering the room burned, remained a sheet of oiled transfer paper. 3 images had been impressed upon it in reverse: Julian's signature from the marriage contract, the added courier route from the Calais dispatch, and portions of the letter supposedly written by Eliza to Crowe. The instrument maker laid the forged death warrant beside the transfer sheet, every stroke aligned. The room passed from skepticism into silence. The frame was discovered beneath the floor of Lord Caro's locked copying room. One sergeant testified, "We broke the door under parliamentary authority. No person entered before us." Caro pointed toward Julian. "Ashbourne arranged this. He knew the location of my office." Eliza stepped closer to the table. "Julian did not know where frame 4 was hidden." "You told us?" "I said it burned at Harcourt House." "Exactly. You claimed certainty because you believed the machine had been removed from the map room and concealed before the fire. When we announced a surviving page from Nathaniel, you sent Crowe to intercept it. He carried the missing screw because you ordered him to remove the final object connecting the carriage, the copying frame and the forged warrant." Crowe looked toward Caro as if waiting for rescue. Nona came. The Lord Chancellor asked why he possessed the screw. Crowe repeated that he had found it. But the instrument maker pointed out wax embedded beneath his fingernails, the same wax used on the frame. Faced with the machine, the intercepted pass, and a charge of treason, Crowe's loyalty broke. "Caro ordered the copies," he said. Caro lunged toward him, but the sergeant seized both arms. Crowe spoke faster. "For 4 years, Caro had sold advance copies of diplomatic routes and trade negotiations to a syndicate that profited whenever British shipments were intercepted or foreign ports closed unexpectedly. Sir Thomas discovered unauthorized copying orders linked to frame 4 and recorded their dates in the Blue Atlas. Captain Nathaniel Vale saw Caro's clerk add the Calais courier route after Sir Thomas sealed the original dispatch. Nathaniel intended to report the alteration, so Caro sent the copied route to French intermediaries, knowing the courier party would be attacked. Nathaniel's death was not an accident, Caro exploited afterward. It was the cost he accepted to protect his scheme. Caro then used the altered dispatch to frame Sir Thomas. Knowing Julian's grief would make him the most convincing accuser, why wait until now to kill Sir Thomas? The Lord Chancellor demanded. Crowe answered that Eliza's repeated petitions had forced a private review of the trial record. The Home Office registry could not produce the original authorization for copying frame 4. Sir Thomas's execution would silence the only man who understood the missing entries. While the marriage would place Eliza, the Harcourt papers, and the surviving estate under Julian's legal control, Caro believed he still controlled Julian. He encouraged the proposal, carried away the signed contract, and used its signature to manufacture the false death warrant. The warrant gave Crowe authority to remove Sir Thomas before the official execution. The burning coach would destroy the prisoner's body and make the death appear like a failed escape. When Eliza rescued him, Caro planted the forged letter in her room. ordered the search of Harcourt House, and sent Frame 4 inside, so the fire could destroy both the machine and the atlas together. Pritchard's unexpected survival forced Caro's clerk to carry the frame back to the Home Office, where Caro concealed it beneath his floor. Magistrate Henshaw had replaced the sealed evidence packet, returned the screw to Crow, and permitted the blue atlas to be destroyed in custody. Henshaw tried to deny the accusation, but the two servants who signed the atlas receipt testified that its seals were intact when officers removed it from Harcourt House. The cut knot and missing pages could therefore have occurred only after Henshaw accepted custody. Caro's financial motive was established later that morning when parliamentary officers compared the payment codes Julian had witnessed in the atlas with deposits made through 3 trading houses controlled by Caro's brother-in-law. Dates in those accounts matched the copied diplomatic routes preserved as impressions on Frame 4. The evidence no longer depended upon one confession or one destroyed book. The machine proved the method. Mrs. Bell proved Caro's access to Julian's signature. Pritchard proved Frame 4 entered the map room before the fire. Crow's pass and confession proved the chain of orders. The transfer sheet proved which documents had been copied. Caro's hidden accounts proved the profit. The Lord Chancellor permanently stayed Sir Thomas's execution and ordered his immediate removal from Newgate. Caro was arrested for treason, conspiracy to murder, forgery and arson. Henshaw was stripped of office and charged with destroying Crown evidence. Crow was offered no pardon, but his cooperation spared him the gallows, while the court determined his sentence. The clerk who set the Harcourt fire confessed after learning that Caro had intended to blame him for the entire scheme. Julian then rose before the same lords who had heard him condemn Sir Thomas. "I presented the altered dispatch as truth because it satisfied my anger," he said. "Lord Caro deceived me, but deception succeeded because I refused Lady Eliza access to the evidence, dismissed her knowledge, and treated grief as proof. Sir Thomas Harcourt suffered because of Caro's crimes and because of my choices. I withdraw every accusation I made against him and ask that this correction be entered publicly beside the original charge." He did not ask Eliza to forgive him. Instead, he petitioned for the reversal of the attainder, restored the Harcourt tenants from his private funds while Parliament processed the estate, paid to rebuild the burned wing, and resigned the government position Caro had helped him obtain. Sir Thomas returned home 2 weeks later, weak, but able to walk with Eliza's arm beneath his. His conviction was formally erased, while Nathaniel's name was restored as the officer whose final investigation exposed the traitor who arranged his death. Julian visited Harcourt House only after Sir Thomas invited him. He never entered a room without permission. During the following months, Eliza supervised the estate's reconstruction and organized the recovered diplomatic records for the parliamentary inquiry. Her skill, once excluded from her father's trial, earned her an official commission examining disputed government documents. Julian assisted when asked, listened when corrected and accepted. That affection did not entitle him to an answer. In early autumn, the map room reopened. Its doors stood wide to the garden, and sunlight crossed the new table where Eliza had arranged the surviving atlas pages. Julian arrived, carrying the marriage contract he had once used to bind her future to his protection. He placed it before her without a ring. Across every page he had written, "Cancelled," and beneath his signature he had added that no Harcourt property, income, or authority would ever pass to him through marriage. "I cannot undo the way I first asked," he said. "I can only return the choice I tried to take from you." Eliza studied him for a long moment. "And if my answer is no, then Harcourt House remains yours. Your work remains yours. And I leave grateful that you saved my brother's honor when I nearly destroyed your father's." She folded the cancelled contract and placed it in the archive, not as a promise, but as evidence of what had changed. "I will not marry you today," she said. Julian bowed, accepting the refusal without argument. Eliza took the map room key from her pocket and placed it in his hand. "But you may return next Sunday and ask whether I will walk with you." Hope crossed his face, restrained but unmistakable. At the beginning, Eliza had entered his locked study in secret and found her future written beneath a stolen signature. Now Julian stood at the open door of her house, holding no authority she had not freely given him. When he stepped outside, he waited on the garden path until Eliza chose to follow.